Jake Miller sat on the edge of his small bed, holding his 3-week-old daughter Emma in his arms. The baby was crying again, and nothing he did seemed to help. Her tiny face was red, and her small fists moved in the air as she screamed. Jake felt his heart breaking with every sound she made. The empty formula can sat on the kitchen counter like a reminder of his failure. He had used the last of it this morning, mixing it with more water than he should have to make it last longer. But even that was gone now. His wallet held only $3 and some loose change. His next paycheck from the construction job would not come for another 5 days. Jake looked around the tiny apartment he shared with Emma. The place felt so empty without Lisa. 3 weeks ago, his wife had been alive, laughing, and getting ready for their baby to arrive. Then everything went wrong during the birth. The doctors tried their best, but Lisa never came home. She never got to hold Emma properly or feed her or sing to her like she had planned. Now Jake was alone with a hungry baby and no idea what to do. He had tried everything he could think of. Yesterday, he had gone to the local food bank, but they were out of baby formula. The social worker there told him to come back next week, but Emma could not wait that long. He had called his mother, but she lived 3 states away and had no money to send. His father had walked out when Jake was 12 and never looked back. The construction company where Jake worked had been understanding about giving him time off after Lisa died. But understanding did not pay the bills. The rent was due in 2 days, and he still owed money to the hospital. Every dollar mattered, and he had nothing left to give. Emma's crying got louder. Jake stood up and walked around the small room, bouncing her gently and making soft sounds. Sometimes this helped, but not tonight. She was hungry, and he had nothing to give her. Jake had never asked anyone for help before. His whole life, he had worked for everything he got. Even when things were hard growing up, he found ways to take care of himself. Asking for charity felt wrong, like giving up. But this was not about him anymore. This was about Emma, and she needed food. He looked out the window at the rain falling on the empty street. The weather had been bad all week, cold and wet, like the world was crying with him. Across town, there was a neighborhood called Riverside, where rich people lived in big houses. Jake had worked on some of those houses, fixing roofs and painting walls. The people there always seemed to have more than they needed. Maybe, Jake thought, maybe someone there would help a hungry baby. The idea made his stomach feel sick with shame, but Emma's cries pushed him forward. He found an old jacket and wrapped it around her as best he could. The jacket had holes in it, but it was all he had. He put on his worn work boots and grabbed his keys. The drive to Riverside took 20 minutes. Jake's old truck made strange noises, and he worried it might break down. He could not afford to fix it if something went wrong. The gas tank was almost empty, but he had enough to get there and back home. Riverside looked different at night. The big houses sat behind perfect lawns with expensive cars in the driveways. Streetlights made everything look clean and safe. Jake felt out of place driving his beat-up truck down these quiet streets. He wondered what people would think if they saw him. He parked in front of a house that looked smaller than the others. It was still nice, with flowers in the front yard and warm yellow light coming from the windows. Through the glass, he could see someone moving around inside. This seemed like a good place to start. Jake sat in his truck for several minutes, trying to find the courage to get out. Emma had stopped crying for now, but he knew she would start again soon. Her small body felt so light in his arms, lighter than it should be. She needed food, and she needed it tonight. Finally, Jake opened the truck door and stepped into the rain. The water hit his face and soaked through his jacket immediately. He hurried up the stone path to the front door, protecting Emma as much as he could from the weather. At the door, Jake stopped again. His hand was raised to knock, but he could not make himself do it. What would he say? How do you ask a stranger to help feed your baby? What if they called the police? What if they thought he was trying to trick them? Emma started crying again, and the sound made Jake's decision for him. He knocked on the door 3 times and waited. Footsteps came from inside the house. Jake heard them getting closer to the door. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might jump out of his chest. The porch light came on, and he knew someone was looking at him through the small window. The lock turned, and the door opened slowly. A woman stood there looking at him. She appeared to be in her 30s with brown hair pulled back and kind eyes. She was wearing simple clothes, jeans, and a soft sweater. When she saw Jake holding the crying baby in the rain, her expression changed immediately from caution to concern. "Oh my goodness," she said, opening the door wider. Come in, come in." Out of the rain. Jake hesitated. "I am sorry to bother you, ma'am. I know this is strange, but I need help. My baby, she is hungry, and I do not have any formula or money to buy more. I was wondering if maybe you had some baby milk or formula you could spare." The woman looked at Jake, then at Emma, then back at Jake. Her eyes were soft and understanding. "Of course, come inside where it's warm. You are both soaking wet." Jake stepped into the house, water dripping from his clothes onto the clean floor. The house felt warm and safe, so different from his cold apartment. The woman closed the door behind them and immediately went to get towels. "My name is Maggie," she said, handing him the towels. "What's your name?" "Jake," he said, trying to dry Emma first before himself. "And this is my daughter Emma. Thank you so much for letting us in. I know this is weird, a stranger showing up at your door like this." Maggie shook her head. "It's not weird at all. You are a father taking care of his child. There's nothing weird about that. Now let me see what I can do to help this little one." Maggie looked at Jake standing in her doorway, water dripping from his old jacket onto her clean floor. She could see the desperation in his eyes and hear the hunger in his baby's cries. Something deep inside her chest moved when she saw them. It had been 2 months since she lost her own baby boy, and the pain was still fresh like an open wound. "Please, sit down," Maggie said, pointing to her soft couch. "Let me get you both warmed up." Jake sat carefully on the edge of the couch, afraid his wet clothes would ruin the nice fabric. Emma continued crying in his arms, and he bounced her gently while looking around the room. The house was comfortable and clean, with books on the shelves and family photos on the walls. It felt like a real home, the kind he had always wanted to give Lisa and Emma. Maggie disappeared into the kitchen and came back with a warm blanket. She wrapped it around Jake and Emma together. "Tell me what happened," she said softly, sitting across from them. Jake took a deep breath. He had practiced this story in his truck, but now the words felt hard to say. "My wife Lisa died 3 weeks ago when Emma was born. The doctors tried to save her, but there were complications. I have been taking care of Emma by myself, but I lost my job last month, and I just started a new one in construction. The pay is not much, and I used all my savings for the hospital bills." Maggie listened without interrupting. Her eyes stayed focused on Jake's face, and he could see real understanding there, not judgment. "I ran out of formula this morning," Jake continued. "I tried stretching it by adding more water, but that just made Emma hungrier. I went to the food bank, but they had nothing. I called everyone I could think of, but there is no one left to ask. I drove here hoping maybe someone would have extra baby formula or milk." Emma's cries got louder, and Jake felt his face turn red with embarrassment. "I am sorry. She is so hungry. I know this sounds crazy, coming to a stranger's house like this." Maggie stood up suddenly. "Wait here," she said, and walked quickly down the hallway. Jake wondered if he had said something wrong. Maybe Maggie was calling the police or child services. Maybe she thought he was a bad father who could not take care of his own child. He started to stand up, thinking he should leave before things got worse, but Maggie came back carrying something in her hands. It was a small framed photo of a baby boy with dark hair and bright eyes. Her hands shook as she held it. "This was my son Danny," she said quietly. He would have been 3 months old now. Jake felt his stomach drop. "I am so sorry, I did not know." Maggie sat back down, still holding the photo. "He died in an accident 2 months ago. A drunk driver hit my car when I was coming home from the doctor. Danny was in his car seat in the back. I was fine, but he—" She stopped talking and wiped her eyes. "I should go," Jake said. "I did not mean to bring up bad memories." "No, please stay," Maggie said quickly. "I want to help Emma. I need to help her." She set the photo down carefully on the coffee table. "Jake, I am still nursing. My body still makes milk for Danny, even though he is gone. The doctor said it would stop eventually, but it has been 2 months and it has not stopped yet." Jake did not understand what she was trying to say at first. Then it hit him, and his eyes went wide. "I could feed Emma myself," Maggie said. "I mean, I could nurse her, if you would let me." Jake stared at her. I could not ask you to do that. You are not asking. I am offering." Maggie looked at Emma, who was still crying weakly in Jake's arms. "She is hungry, and I have what she needs." It seems like the most natural thing in the world. Jake had never heard of anything like this before. He knew that sometimes women nursed other people's babies in emergencies, but this felt so personal, so intimate. "Are you sure? I mean, is it safe?" "I am healthy," Maggie said. "I do not smoke or drink or take any medicine that would hurt a baby. I was nursing Danny right up until the accident." Emma's cries were getting weaker, and Jake knew she was getting tired from being hungry for so long. He looked at Maggie's kind face and saw only genuine care there. "If you really think it would be okay," he said slowly. Maggie smiled for the first time since Jake had arrived. "Let me wash my hands, and then we can see if Emma will take to it." She went to the bathroom and came back a few minutes later. Jake felt nervous and grateful at the same time. This woman was offering to do something incredible for his daughter, something he could never repay. "Here, let me try," Maggie said, reaching for Emma. Jake carefully passed his daughter to Maggie. Emma felt so small in the other woman's arms. Maggie sat back on the couch and adjusted her sweater. Jake looked away to give her privacy, staring at the family photos on the walls instead. After a moment, Emma's crying stopped completely. Jake looked back and saw his daughter nursing peacefully. For the first time in hours, Maggie's face had a look of wonder and sadness mixed together. "She is beautiful," Maggie whispered, looking down at Emma. "She looks like she has your eyes." Jake felt tears running down his face. He had not cried since Lisa's funeral, but seeing his daughter finally getting what she needed broke something loose inside him. "Thank you," he said. "I do not know how to thank you enough." Maggie shook her head. "You do not need to thank me. This is helping me too. I never thought I would get to do this again." They sat in comfortable silence while Emma nursed. Jake watched. His daughter's tiny hands relaxed as her hunger was finally satisfied. Her eyes started to close as she got full and sleepy. "How often does she need to eat?" Maggie asked. "Every few hours," Jake said. "Usually every 3 or 4 hours during the day, and maybe once or twice at night." Maggie nodded. "You can bring her back whenever she needs to eat. I mean it, day or night, whenever she is hungry." Jake could not believe what he was hearing. "I could not ask you to do that. You are not asking. I am telling you." Maggie's voice was firm but kind. "This little girl needs food, and I can give it to her. That is all that matters right now." Emma had fallen asleep in Maggie's arms. Her tiny face looked peaceful and content for the first time all day. Jake felt like a huge weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "I do not even know your last name," he said. "Ross, Maggie Ross." She smiled at him. "And I have a feeling we are going to know each other very well." 3 days had passed since Jake first knocked on Maggie's door. He had been back to her house 6 times already, each time carrying Emma when she got hungry. What started as an emergency solution was becoming a routine that neither of them had. Expected. Jake sat in Maggie's living room, watching her feed Emma by the window. The afternoon sun came through the glass and made everything look warm and peaceful. He still felt strange about the whole situation, but he could not argue with the results. Emma was growing stronger and more alert each day. Her skin had a healthy pink color now, and she was sleeping better at night. "She's getting heavier," Maggie said, smiling down at Emma. "I can feel the difference already," Jake nodded. "The doctor said she was underweight when I took her for her checkup last week. But now she looks like a normal baby should look." "You took her to the doctor?" Maggie asked. "How did you pay for that?" Jake felt embarrassed. "I put it on a credit card. I know I should not have done that since I am already in debt, but I was worried about her." Maggie looked thoughtful. "Medical bills can be expensive. Have you looked into any programs that might help?" "I tried, but there is so much paperwork and I do not understand most of it," Jake said. "I barely finished high school and all those forms make my head spin." "I could help you with that," Maggie offered. "I am pretty good with paperwork and applications." Jake looked at her with surprise. "You would do that?" "Of course. You are already letting me help with Emma. This is just another way I can be useful." Over the past few days, Jake had learned that Maggie was not like other people he knew. She was smart in ways that impressed him. When he mentioned his dream of starting his own construction company, she asked detailed questions about business, plans and startup costs. She knew about things like insurance and taxes and permits that Jake had never thought about. "How do you know so much about business?" Jake asked. Maggie shrugged. "I read a lot. I went to college for business before I got married. I always found it interesting." "What did your husband do?" Jake asked, then immediately felt bad for asking. "I am sorry, I should not have asked that." "It is okay," Maggie said. "We got divorced right after Danny was born. He could not handle having a baby with special needs. Danny was born with some health problems, and my ex-husband decided he did not want that responsibility." Jake felt angry at a man he had never met. "That is terrible. How could he leave you when you needed him most?" "Some people are not built for hard times," Maggie said quietly. "I learned that the hard way." Emma finished nursing and fell asleep in Maggie's arms. Jake watched how naturally Maggie held her, like she had been doing it Emma's whole life. "Can I ask you something?" Jake said. "Of course. Why are you helping me? I mean, really helping me? Most people would have given me some formula and sent me on my way. But you are doing so much more than that." Maggie was quiet for a long moment. She looked down at Emma sleeping peacefully in her arms. "When Danny died, I thought my life was over," she said finally. "I felt like I had no purpose anymore. Being a mother was the only thing I had ever been good at, and suddenly that was taken away from me. I spent 2 months sitting in this house, wondering why I was still alive when my baby was not." She looked up at Jake. "Then you showed up at my door with Emma. For the first time since the accident, I felt needed again. I felt like maybe there was a reason I was still here." Jake felt his throat get tight. "I am sorry you lost Danny. I cannot imagine how hard that must be. And I cannot imagine how hard it must be to lose your wife and try to raise a baby alone." Maggie said, "I guess we both know what it feels like to have our world turned upside down." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Jake looked around the room again, noticing details he had missed before. The furniture was nice but not flashy. The books on the shelves were mostly about business and finance. There were expensive looking art pieces on the walls, but they were small and understated. "This is a really nice house," Jake said. "Your ex-husband must have done well for himself." Maggie smiled in a way that seemed to have a secret behind it. Something like that. Jake's phone buzzed with a text message. He looked at it and frowned. "Everything okay?" Maggie asked. "It is my boss. He wants me to work overtime tomorrow, but I told him I could not because I need to take care of Emma. He is not happy about it." "What kind of construction work do you do?" "Mostly residential stuff. Roofing, painting, basic repairs. I am good with my hands, but I never learned the business side of things. That is why I want to start my own company someday. I could make more money and have more control over my schedule." Maggie's eyes lit up. "That is a great goal. Have you thought about what kind of company you would want to start?" Jake laughed. "I think about it all the time, but thinking and doing are two different things. I would need money to buy tools and a truck and insurance. I would need to get licenses and permits. I would need to find customers and learn how to do the books. It seems impossible." "It is not impossible," Maggie said firmly. "Difficult, yes, but not impossible. Have you ever written down a business plan?" "I would not know where to start." "I could help you with that," Maggie said. "I mean, if you want me to. I actually enjoy working on business plans. It is like solving a puzzle." Jake stared at her. "You would really help me with that?" "Why not? I have plenty of time, and you have the skills and experience. We could make a good team." Jake felt something stir in his chest that he had not felt since Lisa died. It was hope. For the first time in months, he could see a future that was not just about surviving day to day. "I would like that," he said. "I would like that a lot." Maggie shifted Emma to her other arm. "There is something else I want to talk to you about. I have been thinking about Emma's feeding schedule. Right now you are driving over here every few hours, and that is using gas you probably cannot afford." Jake nodded. "I have been worried about that too. My truck is old and drinks gas like crazy." "What if you and Emma stayed here for a while?" Maggie asked. "I have a guest room that you could use. It would be easier for Emma's feeding schedule, and you would not have to drive back and forth all the time." Jake's first instinct was to say no. He had been taking care of himself his whole life, and moving in with someone he barely knew seemed wrong. But then he looked at Emma sleeping so peacefully in Maggie's arms, and he thought about how much easier it would make everything. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I do not want to be a burden." "You would not be a burden," Maggie said. "You would be helping me as much as I am helping you. This house has been too quiet since Danny died. Having you and Emma here would make it feel alive again." Jake thought about his cold, empty apartment with its broken heater and leaky faucet. He thought about Emma crying in the middle of the night with no one to help. He thought about driving his dying truck back and forth across town every few hours. "Okay," he said. "If you are really sure, then yes, thank you." Maggie smiled, and for the first time since Jake had met her, she looked truly happy. "This is going to be good for all of us." Jake had been living in Maggie's guest room for 2 weeks now. Emma was thriving, growing stronger and happier each day. The arrangement had worked out better than either of them had expected. Jake helped with small repairs around the house, and Maggie took care of Emma during the day while Jake worked his construction job. But Jake was starting to notice things that did not add up. It started with small details. The coffee maker in the kitchen was one of those expensive machines that cost more than Jake made in a week. The towels in the bathroom were so soft and thick that Jake had never felt anything like them. When he opened the refrigerator, it was always full of high-quality food that must have cost a fortune. One morning, Jake was fixing a loose cabinet door in the kitchen when he noticed the knife set on the counter. He knew about tools, and these knives were professional grade, the kind that fancy restaurants used. Each one probably cost more than his monthly rent. "Maggie," Jake called out, "these are really nice knives. Where did you get them?" Maggie was in the living room feeding Emma. "Oh, those old things? I think they were a wedding gift or something. I do not really remember." Jake looked at the knives again. They were not old. They still had the sharp edge and perfect balance of brand new blades. But he did not say anything. Later that day, Jake was working in the backyard when a delivery truck pulled up. The driver brought 3 large boxes to the front door. Jake signed for them and carried them inside. "What did you order?" he asked. "Maggie. Just some baby things for Emma," she said. But she looked nervous. Jake helped her open the boxes. Inside were the most expensive baby clothes he had ever seen. There were tiny dresses with real silk, soft blankets that felt like clouds, and toys that looked like they came from the fanciest store in the city. "Maggie, this stuff must have cost hundreds of dollars," Jake said. "You do not need to spend this much money on Emma." "I wanted to," Maggie said quickly. "I have some savings, and I like buying things for her." Jake felt uncomfortable. He was grateful for everything Maggie was doing, but this felt like too much. "I cannot let you spend this kind of money on us." "It is not about you," Maggie said. "It is about Emma. She deserves nice things." That night, after Emma was asleep, Jake could not stop thinking about the expensive baby clothes and the fancy knives and all the other little things he had noticed. He remembered something his boss had said about the house they were working on that week. "That place belongs to some tech millionaire," his boss had told him. "Guy made his fortune selling some app or something. Now he has more money than he knows what to do with." Jake looked around Maggie's house with new eyes. The paintings on the walls looked like the kind you would see in a museum. The furniture was simple but clearly expensive. Even the light fixtures were more elegant than anything Jake had ever seen. He got up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see Maggie's car in the driveway. It was a nice car, but not too flashy. The kind of car that rich people bought when they wanted to look normal. Jake felt a strange feeling in his stomach. He went back to his room and took out his phone. He had never looked up Maggie's name online before. It felt like spying on someone who had been nothing but kind to him. But his curiosity was stronger than his guilt. He typed Margaret Ross into the search engine. Hundreds of results came up, but most of them were for different people. Then he added Riverside to the search, and everything changed. The first result was a news article from 3 months ago. The headline read, "Tech heiress Margaret Ross loses infant son in tragic accident." Jake's hands started shaking as he read the article. It talked about how Margaret Ross, daughter of tech billionaire Richard Ross, had lost her 3-month-old son in a car accident. The article mentioned that she was worth over $50 million from her inheritance and her own business investments. Jake sat on his bed, staring at the phone screen. $50 million. Maggie was worth $50 million, and she had been pretending to be just a regular person. He kept reading. There were articles about her college graduation, her brief marriage to a wealthy businessman, and her work on various charity boards. There were photos of her at fancy parties wearing expensive dresses and jewelry. The woman in those photos looked like Maggie, but also completely different. Her hair was styled perfectly, her makeup was professional, and she was smiling the kind of smile that people put on for cameras. She looked like she belonged in a world that Jake could never be part of. Jake put his phone down and tried to think. Everything made sense now. The expensive house, the fancy food, the way Maggie knew so much about business. She was not just some suburban mom who had read a few books. She was a millionaire who had been living a lie. But why? Why would someone with $50 million pretend to be normal? Why would she let Jake and Emma into her house and act like she was just getting by like everyone else? Jake felt angry and confused and embarrassed all at the same time. Had this all been some kind of game to her? Was he just a charity case that made her feel good about herself? He thought about all the time she had offered to help him with his business plan. Now he realized she was not just being nice. She probably knew more about business than most people with college degrees. She had been talking down to him this whole time, pretending his dreams were realistic when she knew he would never make it. Jake looked at Emma sleeping in her crib. She was wearing one of the expensive outfits that Maggie had bought for her. Even his own daughter was dressed better than he was, thanks to a woman who had been lying to him for weeks. He heard footsteps in the hallway. Maggie knocked softly on his door. "Jake, are you okay?" "I heard you moving around." Jake opened the door. Maggie was standing there in her simple pajamas, looking concerned. But now Jake could see things differently. Her pajamas were simple, but they were made of expensive fabric. Her hair was messy, but it was the kind of messy that looked good because it had been cut by a professional stylist. "I know," Jake said quietly. "Know what? I know who you are. I know about the money." Maggie's face went white. For a moment, neither of them said anything. "Jake, I can explain," she said finally. "Can you?" "Because I am trying to understand why someone with $50 million would lie to me for weeks. I am trying to understand why you would let me feel grateful for your help when you probably spend more on lunch than I make in a day." Maggie looked down at her hands. "It is not like that." "Then what is it like?" Jake asked. "Because from where I am standing, it looks like you have been playing some kind of game with me." Poor Jake and his hungry baby, how entertaining for the rich lady. "That is not fair," Maggie said, her voice getting stronger. "You do not understand what it is like to be me." "You are right," Jake said. "I do not understand what it is like to have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes and still pretend to be struggling like the rest of us." Maggie looked like she was about to cry. "I was not pretending about the important things. I was not pretending about losing Danny or about caring for Emma or about wanting to help you. But you were pretending about everything else," Jake said. "You let me feel like we were equals when we are not even living in the same world." Jake turned away from her and started packing his few belongings into a bag. "I think Emma and I should go." "Jake, please do not do this," Maggie said. "Let me explain why I did not tell you." "I do not want to hear it," Jake said. "I do not want to be anyone's charity project." "You are not a charity project," Maggie said desperately. "You are my friend." Jake stopped packing and looked at her. "Friends do not lie to each other about who they are." He finished packing and picked up Emma, who was starting to wake up. "Thank you for everything you did for us. But I cannot stay here knowing that none of it was real." "It was real," Maggie said, tears running down her face. "All of it was real." But Jake was already walking toward the door, carrying Emma and his bag. He did not look back as he left the house where he had felt safe and hopeful for the first time since Lisa died. Outside in his truck, Jake sat for a moment before starting the engine. He looked back at the house and saw Maggie standing in the window, watching him leave. He drove away into the night, not knowing where he was going or what he would do next. All he knew was that he could not stay in a world built on lies, no matter how kind those lies had been. Jake sat in his cold apartment, holding Emma as she cried. It had been 3 days since he left Maggie's house, and nothing was going right. He had no formula left, and Emma was hungry again. His truck had broken down that morning, and he could not afford to fix it. The rent was due tomorrow, and he still did not have enough money. But the worst part was how much he missed Maggie. Jake tried to tell himself he was angry at her for lying to him. He tried to focus on how betrayed he felt when he learned she was worth $50 million. But every time Emma cried, he thought about how peaceful she had been at Maggie's house. Every time he looked around his empty apartment, he remembered how warm and safe Maggie's home had felt. Emma's crying got worse. Jake had tried giving her water, but that only made her more upset. He knew she needed real milk, and he knew there was only one place he could get it, but his pride would not let him go back. Jake's phone rang. It was his boss from the construction job. "Jake, where are you?" "You were supposed to be here an hour ago." "My truck broke down. Jake said. I am trying to find a way to get there. This is the third time this month you have been late or missed work, his boss said. I like you, Jake, but I cannot keep a guy who is not reliable. I am sorry, but I have to let you go. The phone went quiet. Jake stared at it for a moment, then put it down. He had lost his job. Emma was hungry. His truck was broken. In 3 days, he had gone from having hope for the future to having nothing at all. Emma's crying filled the small apartment. Jake felt tears running down his face as he realized he had no choice left. He wrapped Emma in her thin blanket and started walking toward Riverside. It was 5 miles away, but he had no other way to get there. The October air was cold, and Emma cried the whole way. By the time Jake reached Maggie's street, his legs were tired and Emma was exhausted from crying. But as he got closer to her house, he saw something that made his heart sink. There was a moving truck in the driveway. Jake ran to the front door and knocked hard. Maggie opened it, and Jake could see she had been crying. Her eyes were red and her face was puffy. Jake, she said, surprised. What are you doing here? Emma is hungry, Jake said simply. I lost my job today and I have no money left. I know. You lied to me, but she needs help. Maggie looked at Emma, who was crying weakly in Jake's arms. Without saying anything, she took the baby and invited Jake inside. The house looked different. There were boxes everywhere, and most of the furniture was covered with sheets. You are moving? Jake asked. Yes, Maggie said, sitting down to feed Emma. I am going back to New York. My father wants me to work at the family company. Jake felt something break inside his chest. When? Tomorrow. They sat in silence while Emma nursed. Jake looked around at all the boxes and felt like he was seeing the end of something important. Why are you leaving? Jake asked. Maggie did not look at him. Because I thought I could have a normal life here. I thought I could be just a regular person. But you made me realize that was impossible. I did not mean for you to leave, Jake said. Yes, you did, Maggie said quietly. You made it very clear that you could not be around someone like me, someone with money. Jake felt ashamed. I was angry. I felt like you had been lying to me. I was lying to you, Maggie said, but not about the things that mattered. I was. Not lying about losing Danny, or about caring for Emma, or about wanting to help you with your business. She looked at him for the first time since he had arrived. I was lying about the money because I wanted you to see me as a person, not as a bank account. Do you know how many people have tried to be my friend just because of what I am worth? Do you know how many men have dated me just because they wanted access to my money? Jake shook his head. When you showed up at my door with Emma, you had no idea who I was. You looked at me and saw someone who might help your baby, not someone who might help your bank account. For the first time in my life, someone wanted to know me, not my money. Jake felt his throat get tight. I never wanted your money. I know, Maggie said. That is why I fell in love with you. Jake stared at her. What? I fell in love with you, Jake. Not because you are poor or because you needed help. I fell in love with you because you are a good father and a hard worker and a kind person. I fell in love with you because when you look at me, you see Maggie, not Margaret Ross, the heiress. Jake felt his heart beating fast. I fell in love with you too, but you cannot love someone you do not trust, Maggie said sadly. And you made it clear that you do not trust me. I was scared, Jake said. When I found out about the money, I felt like I was not good enough for you. I felt like you had been pretending to care about my dreams when you knew I would never be successful. Your dreams are not small just because I have money, Maggie said. Your construction business idea is good. You are skilled and smart and determined. Money does not change any of that. Emma had finished nursing and was sleeping peacefully in Maggie's arms. Jake looked at his daughter and realized something important. When Emma grows up, I want her to know that her father was brave enough to ask for help when she needed it, Jake said. I want her to know that love is more important than pride. He got down on his knees in front of Maggie. I was wrong. I was angry and scared, and I said things I did not mean. The money does not change who you are. You are still the woman who opened her door to a stranger. You are still the woman who fed my baby when she was hungry. You are still the woman who made me believe I could have a better life. Maggie started crying again. Jake, I am so sorry I did not tell you the truth from the beginning. I am sorry too, Jake said. I am sorry I let my pride be more important than what we had together. Jake took a deep breath. Maggie, I know I do not have anything to offer you except myself. I know you could have any man you want. But I love you, and I love the way you love Emma. If you will give me another chance, I promise I will never let my pride come between us again. Maggie looked down at Emma sleeping in her arms, then back at Jake kneeling on the floor. What are you asking? Me? She said softly. I am asking you to marry me, Jake said. Not because of your money, and not despite your money. Just because I love you, and I want to build a life with you. Maggie smiled through her tears. What about the construction business? We will figure it out together, Jake said. As partners. Real partners. Yes, Maggie said. Yes, I will marry you. Jake stood up and kissed her gently, being careful not to wake Emma. 6 months later, Jake and Maggie were married in a small ceremony in Maggie's backyard. Emma was there too, wearing a beautiful white dress and sleeping peacefully in Jake's arms during the vows. Jake's construction company was doing well. Maggie had helped him write a business plan and get the proper licenses, but the success came from Jake's hard work and skill. They specialized in building affordable homes for working families, and they donated their time to help families who could not afford to pay. The company trucks had Miller Construction painted on the sides, and Jake was proud to see his name there. But he was even more proud of the work they did and the families they helped. At the wedding reception, Jake gave a speech. A year ago, I was a man who had lost everything, he said, looking at Maggie and Emma. I thought I was alone in the world. But sometimes when you think you are just asking for help, you are really asking for love. And sometimes the person who gives you what you need is the person you were meant to find all along. Maggie smiled at him from across the room, holding Emma, who was now crawling and laughing and calling her Mama. I learned that love is not about having the same amount of money or coming from the same place, Jake continued. Love is about seeing the best in each other and helping each other become the people we are meant to be. As the sun set over their new life together, Jake realized that the night he knocked on Maggie's door asking for milk for his baby was the night his real life began. He had come looking for formula, but he had found a family instead.